Welcome to our deep dive today on the potential health and nutritional benefits of cocoa powder.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, when they think about cocoa powder, they're thinking about, something that tastes good.
Right.
But it turned out there might be a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into the potential health benefits, I think it would be good to sort of start at the beginning
Okay.
and kind of trace the journey of how this magical powder comes to be.
Yeah, so it all starts with the Theobroma cacao tree,
Okay.
which is native to regions spanning from southeastern Mexico to the Amazon basin.
Okay.
And the word cacao itself actually comes from Mayan and Aztec terms,
Mm,
meaning bean of the cacao tree.
that's interesting.
So these trees bear fruit pods
Okay.
containing the beans that ultimately are transformed into the cocoa powder that we all know and love.
Okay, so we've got these beans.
Hmm.
What happens next?
So the beans undergo a multi-step process
Okay.
to really bring out their unique flavor and transform them into a usable product.
Hmm.
First, they're fermented, which is really a crucial step in developing that characteristic chocolate flavor.
Okay.
Then they're dried, roasted, cracked to remove the shells,
Okay.
and then winnowed to separate the nibs.
Gotcha.
Finally, they're ground and pressed to separate the cocoa butter, leaving behind cocoa powder.
Interesting. So was that it?
Yep.
Are cacao nibs and cocoa powder essentially the same thing?
Not quite.
Okay.
You often hear the terms cacao and cocoa used interchangeably,
Right.
but there's a key distinction there.
Okay.
Cacao actually refers to the raw, unroasted bean,
Mm.
whereas cocoa is the roasted product.
Okay.
And this difference, as we'll see, impacts their nutritional profiles.
Okay, that makes sense. So cacao is like the raw, unprocessed version, retaining more of its natural nutrients, whereas cocoa has gone through some processing that might alter its composition.
Precisely.
Okay.
So now let's dive into those nutritional benefits that have people so intrigued by this powder.
Yeah.
It's packed with a variety of nutrients, particularly antioxidants,
Mm.
which can have a really powerful impact on our health.
You mentioned antioxidants. What exactly are those, and what role do they play in cocoa?
Antioxidants are compounds that protect our cells from damage caused by free radicals.
Okay.
These free radicals are unstable molecules that can contribute to inflammation and a whole host of chronic diseases.
Mm.
Cocoa, especially the less processed cacao, is loaded with a type of antioxidant called flavonoids.
So these flavonoids in cocoa are basically acting like tiny superheroes fighting off those harmful free radicals.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And this antioxidant power is one of the reasons why cocoa has been linked to a variety of health benefits.
Okay, so we've got the antioxidant power of flavonoids. What other nutritional benefits does cocoa offer?
It's also a good source of several essential minerals. We're talking magnesium, which is vital for heart health, muscle function, and energy production.
Okay.
Iron for healthy blood potassium for regulating blood pressure.
Hmm.
And zinc, a key player in immunity.
Wow, it's amazing how something so delicious can also be so good for you.
Right.
But let's break down some of these potential benefits. I've heard a lot about cocoa being good for your heart.
You're right. Heart health is a significant area of research when it comes to cocoa.
Okay.
The flavonols in cocoa have been shown to have a positive impact on cardiovascular health in several ways.
So how do these flavonols actually benefit our hearts?
Well, research suggests they can potentially lower blood pressure, improve blood flow,
Okay.
and even improve cholesterol levels by reducing the bad LDL cholesterol and increasing the good HDL cholesterol.
Interesting. So it's not just about preventing heart disease, it's about improving overall cardiovascular function.
Exactly. And to give you an idea of the potential impact, the European Food Safety Authority
Okay.
recommends a daily intake of 2.5 grams
Okay.
of high flavanol cocoa powder
Okay.
for maintaining healthy blood flow.
Hmm.
However, it's worth noting that some researchers believe even higher amounts are needed to see significant benefits. This highlights the ongoing debate and the need for further investigation in this field.
I see. So there's still much to learn, but the initial findings are certainly promising.
Right.
What about cocoa's effects on the brain? I've always felt like chocolate makes me feel more alert.
There might be some truth to that feeling.
Okay.
Studies suggest that cocoa can have a positive impact on cognitive function and memory.
Okay.
The flavonols we've been discussing are thought to improve blood flow to the brain, which is essential for optimal brain function.
Hmm.
Some research even hints at a possible link between chocolate consumption and a lower risk of cognitive decline as we age.
That's fascinating. So indulging in a bit of dark chocolate could actually be good for our brains.
It's an intriguing possibility, but of course more research is needed.
Right.
And it's important to remember that we're talking about the benefits of cocoa, not necessarily sugary chocolate treats.
Right. Of course. We'll be sure to distinguish between those two as we continue our deep dive.
Yes.
Now let's move on to another area of health that cocoa might impact: blood sugar control.
Okay.
This one seems a bit counterintuitive since we often associate chocolate with sugar.
You're right. It might seem surprising.
Yeah,
While indulging in overly sugary chocolate is definitely not recommended for blood sugar regulation,
right.
cocoa itself may actually improve insulin sensitivity.
Okay.
This means that your cells become more efficient at using insulin to lower blood sugar levels.
So how does that work?
The flavonols in cocoa are thought to play a role in this process.
Okay.
They may help improve the signaling pathways involved in insulin action, making the body more responsive to insulin.
Huh.
This is particularly relevant for individuals managing or concerned about diabetes.
That's incredible. So cocoa could potentially be a helpful tool in managing blood sugar levels.
It's a possibility.
Now here's a topic that I'm particularly interested in. Cocoa's potential for weight management.
Okay.
It seems almost too good for true, chocolate helping us lose weight.
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but research suggests that cocoa may play a role in regulating energy use, reducing appetite and inflammation,
Okay.
and increasing fat oxidation and feelings of fullness.
So are you saying those rich chocolatey flavors could actually help us feel satisfied and eat less?
Yeah,
That's a game changer.
it's certainly a fascinating area of research,
Yeah.
but it's important to acknowledge that the findings are still somewhat mixed.
Okay.
It's not a guaranteed weight loss solution, but the possibility is intriguing and it warrants further exploration.
I agree. It's definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on. Now let's talk about a compound we've mentioned a few times, theobromine.
Okay.
What exactly is it, and why is it significant in cocoa?
Theobromine is a key alkaloid found in both cacao and cocoa, but it's especially abundant in the raw, unroasted form.
Okay.
It's similar in structure to caffeine
Hmm.
and shares some of its stimulating effects, but it generally acts more gently on the body.
So it gives us a boost without the jitters or anxiety often associated with caffeine.
That's the general idea.
Okay.
And remember that roasting process we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, it actually reduces the theobromine content,
Hmm.
highlighting another difference between cacao and cocoa.
Right. So if we're looking for a gentler energy boost, raw cacao might be a better choice than heavily roasted cocoa powder.
Exactly.
Okay.
And aside from its mood-boosting potential, theobromine may have other benefits as well.
Hmm.
It might act as a bronchodilator, helping to open up the airways.
Okay.
This is why some studies are exploring its potential benefits in managing asthma.
It seems like theobromine is a multifaceted compound with a lot of potential.
It seems so.
Now we've learned so much about the science behind cocoa's benefits, but how can our listeners actually incorporate this amazing powder into their diets?
That's a great question. And the beauty of cocoa powder is its versatility.
Yeah,
It's not just for dessert anymore.
exactly. Let's start with a basic recommendation. How much cocoa powder should someone aim for per day?
A good starting point is about 1 to 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder per day.
Okay.
But remember, the type of cocoa powder matters.
Okay.
Raw cacao will be more potent than Dutch processed cocoa, which has undergone more processing.
Right.
It's always a good idea to adjust based on your individual tolerance and how your body reacts.
Okay, so start slow and adjust as needed.
Right.
But how can we actually enjoy this cocoa powder? It can't just be plain powder all the time, right?
Absolutely not. There are so many creative ways to incorporate it into your diet.
For example.
Well, you can add cocoa powder to smoothies for a rich chocolatey boost. You can stir it into your morning coffee.
And of course, we can't forget about baking brownies, muffins, cakes. The possibilities are endless.
Right? And what about those no-bake treats?
Yeah.
Energy balls made with raw cacao dates and nuts are a delicious and healthy snack.
I love those. You can even sprinkle cocoa powder over yogurt or fruit for a simple and satisfying treat.
Or get creative and make your own hot chocolate using unsweetened cocoa powder. And your choice of sweetener and milk, the options are truly endless.
Speaking of recipes, are there any specific recipes you would recommend for our listeners to try?
Sure, here's a recipe for a delicious and nutritious raw cacao smoothie.
Okay.
Simply blend a ripe banana, a few teaspoons of raw cacao powder, a tablespoon of almond butter, a cup of almond milk,
Okay.
a tablespoon of chia seeds, and a touch of honey, or maple syrup if you like it sweeter.
Sounds amazing. And for those who prefer something more portable, how about raw cacao energy balls?
Perfect combine dates, almonds, or cashews, raw cacao powder, coconut oil, and a pinch of salt, and a food processor.
Okay.
Roll them into balls, and you've got a portable energy-boosting snack.
Fantastic. So we've got plenty of options for incorporating cocoa into our daily lives.
Yes.
But before we wrap up this part of our cocoa journey, let's touch on some important considerations when choosing and consuming cocoa products.
Absolutely. First and foremost, choose high-quality, unsweetened, or minimally sweetened cocoa powder.
Okay.
You want to enjoy the benefits without the added sugar.
That's a great point. And what about caffeine sensitivity?
Right, be mindful of that, especially if you're consuming cocoa later in the day.
Okay.
The theobromine content can still have a stimulating effect.
And another point to consider is that cocoa naturally contains lead and cadmium, especially darker varieties.
This is something to be aware of, but it's important to remember that the levels found in most cocoa products are generally not considered harmful when consumed in moderation.
Okay,
Choosing cocoa from reputable sources can help minimize any concerns.
great advice. So enjoy cocoa, but do so in moderation and choose wisely. Anything else our listeners should keep in mind?
I think we've covered the key points for now,
Okay.
but there's still much more to discover about the world of cocoa.
That's right. We'll be back in part 2 to delve deeper into some fascinating aspects of cocoa, so stay tuned.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our exploration of cocoa.
Okay.
Before we move on, you mentioned that research is still ongoing regarding many of the potential health benefits we discussed.
Right.
Are there any areas where the evidence is particularly strong or where scientists are really focusing their attention?
One area that has garnered a lot of interest is the potential link between cocoa consumption and a reduced risk of certain types of cancer.
That's interesting. I remember you mentioning that the flavonols in cocoa have shown some promising anti-cancer properties in studies. Could you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. While the research in humans is still somewhat limited, there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that a diet rich in flavonols like those found in cocoa may be associated with a reduced risk of cancer.
So how do these flavonols actually work to potentially protect against cancer?
Well, one of the key mechanisms is their antioxidant activity. As we discussed earlier, flavonols help protect our cells from damage caused by free radicals, which can contribute to the development of various diseases, including cancer.
Right, so it's like they're helping to neutralize those harmful free radicals that can wreak havoc in our bodies.
Exactly. In addition to their antioxidant activity, flavonols may also have other anti-cancer properties. For example, some research suggests they may help inhibit the growth and spread of cancer cells and even induce cancer cell death.
That's incredible. It seems like cocoa really is a multitasker when it comes to the health benefits.
It's true, but it's important to remember that cocoa is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to cancer prevention. A healthy lifestyle that includes a balanced diet, regular exercise, and stress management is essential.
Absolutely. Cocoa can be a valuable addition to a holistic approach to health and well-being, but it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about another interesting aspect of cocoa, its potential benefits for people with asthma.
Okay.
I remember you mentioned that cocoa contains compounds called theobromine and theophylline,
Right.
which may have anti-asthmatic effects.
Yeah.
Could you explain how those work?
Yes, both of those compounds have shown some potential in this area. Theobromine, as we discussed earlier, is structurally similar to caffeine.
Okay.
It may help reduce persistent coughing. And theophylline is a bronchodilator, meaning it helps relax the muscles in the airways,
Okay.
making it easier to breathe.
So how does cocoa compare to traditional asthma medications? Is it a viable alternative?
Well, it's important to note that the research on cocoa and asthma is still in its early stages,
Okay.
and it's definitely not a replacement for prescribed medications.
Right.
However, some animal studies have shown promising results suggesting that cocoa extract may help reduce airway constriction and inflammation.
So it's an area worth exploring further.
Absolutely. And it highlights the potential for natural compounds, like those found in cocoa, to play a complementary role in managing certain health conditions.
Okay. Now, I want to address something that I know some listeners might be wondering about. We've talked a lot about the benefits of cocoa, but what about the downsides? Are there any potential risks or negative effects we should be aware of?
That's a great question, and it's important to be realistic. Like any food, cocoa should be consumed in moderation.
Okay.
And there are a few potential downsides to be aware of.
Let's start with caffeine content. We know that cocoa contains theobromine, which has stimulating effects similar to caffeine, although gentler.
Right. And while the theobromine is less likely to cause jitters or insomnia compared to caffeine,
Okay.
it's still something to be mindful of, especially if you're sensitive to stimulants.
So limiting cocoa consumption later in the day might be a good idea.
Exactly. Another thing to consider is the sugar content of many chocolate products.
Oh, yes, I love a good chocolate bar, but I know many of them are loaded with sugar, which can negate the health benefits of the cocoa.
Right. And excessive sugar intake can contribute to a whole host of health problems, so it's crucial to infuse unsweetened or minimally sweetened cocoa powder when possible.
And if you're indulging in a chocolate treat, opt for dark chocolate with a high percentage of cocoa solids.
Absolutely. The higher the cocoa content, the lower the sugar content, and the more flavonols you'll get. It's a win-win.
Now let's touch on a topic that we briefly mentioned earlier, the presence of lead and cadmium in cocoa.
Okay.
This is something that has received some attention in recent years, and it's understandable for people to be concerned.
Right.
So can you explain why these heavy metals are found in cocoa and what the potential risks are?
Well, lead and cadmium are naturally occurring elements found in soil, and they can be absorbed by cocoa beans during their growth.
Hmm. And it seems like darker chocolate varieties tend to have higher levels of these heavy metals. Is that because of the roasting process?
That's right, the longer the beans are roasted, the more concentrated the lead and cadmium become. However, it's important to emphasize that the levels found in most cocoa products are generally not considered harmful when consumed in moderation.
So, what can we do to minimize our exposure to these heavy metals?
Choosing cocoa from reputable sources is key.
Okay.
Look for brands that prioritize sustainable farming practices and have strict quality control measures in place. They are more likely to have tested their products and ensure that heavy metal levels are within safe limits.
And as we've said before, enjoying cocoa in moderation as part of a balanced diet is always a good approach.
Right.
Now let's move on to a slightly different aspect of cocoa consumption, its potential impact on gut health.
Ah, yes. Gut health is such a crucial aspect of overall health, and it's definitely a hot topic in the health and wellness world. Our gut microbiome, which is the trillions of bacteria that reside in our digestive tract,
Okay.
plays a crucial role in our overall health.
So how does cocoa factor into the equation? How does it impact our gut microbiome?
Well, one way is through its fiber content. Cocoa contains fiber, which is essential for feeding the beneficial bacteria in our gut. These bacteria help us digest food, produce vitamins, and support our immune system.
So cocoa is basically providing nourishment for our gut bacteria.
Exactly, and some studies suggest that the flavonols in cocoa may also have prebiotic effects,
Okay.
meaning they help promote the growth of these good bacteria.
Interesting. So it's not just about feeding the bacteria we already have, it's also about encouraging the growth of more beneficial bacteria.
That's the idea. While more research is being done in this area, the initial findings suggest that cocoa could be a gut-friendly food.
It seems like cocoa is a gift that keeps on giving with potential benefits for our heart, brain, blood sugar, weight, and even our gut. But before we get ahead of ourselves, are there any groups of people who should be cautious about consuming cocoa or who might need to avoid it altogether?
That's an important point. While cocoa is generally safe for most people, there are a few exceptions.
For example,
Well, individuals with certain medical conditions such as irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, or inflammatory bowel disease, IBD,
okay,
may find that cocoa triggers their symptoms.
so anyone with a digestive disorder should probably consult with their doctor before adding cocoa to their diet.
Exactly. Additionally, pregnant and breastfeeding women should moderate their intake of cocoa due to its caffeine content.
Right, it's always best to err on the side of caution during pregnancy and breastfeeding. And what about children? Is cocoa safe for them?
Children can enjoy cocoa, but in moderation. It's best to avoid giving them large amounts due to the caffeine content.
So just like with most things, moderation is key.
Exactly. And as always, it's a good idea to talk to your doctor if you have any concerns about incorporating cocoa into your diet or your child's diet.
Great advice. Now, with all this talk about cocoa's potential health benefits, it's easy to get carried away. But it's important to remember that cocoa is just one part of a healthy lifestyle.
You're absolutely right. A balanced diet, regular exercise, stress management, and adequate sleep are all crucial for overall health and well-being.
Exactly. Cocoa can be a delicious and nutritious addition to a healthy lifestyle, but it's not a substitute for those foundational elements.
Right. Now, before we wrap up this part of our cocoa journey, I'd like to address a common misconception. Some people believe that cocoa is addictive because of its stimulating effects. Is there any truth to that?
That's a good question. I know some people feel like they need their chocolate fix,
Right.
but is it a true addiction in the clinical sense?
Well, while cocoa does contain theobromine, which has stimulating effects, the evidence for it being truly addictive is limited.
So it's more about the enjoyment and the pleasurable sensations associated with chocolate rather than a physical dependence.
Exactly. While some people may experience cravings or feel a sense of reward when they eat chocolate, this is likely due to the combination of sensory experiences and the release of endorphins, which are feel-good chemicals in the brain.
That makes sense. So we can enjoy our chocolate without worrying about becoming addicted.
Right? And it's important to remember that chocolate is often combined with sugar, which can also contribute to those cravings.
That's a good point. So choosing dark chocolate with a higher cocoa content and less sugar can help mitigate those cravings and allow us to enjoy the true flavors and potential benefits of cocoa.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears and talk about the environmental impact of cocoa production.
Okay, that's a crucial aspect that we can't ignore. The demand for cocoa has led to some concerns about deforestation, unfair labor practices, and the impact on local communities in cocoa-growing regions.
You're absolutely right. As conscious consumers, it's our responsibility to be aware of these issues and to support sustainable practices.
So what are some things we can look for when choosing cocoa products to ensure that they've been produced ethically and sustainably?
One important factor is certification. Look for labels like Fairtrade Rainforest Alliance and UTZ. These certifications indicate that the cocoa has been produced in a way that meets certain social, environmental, and economic standards.
That's helpful. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for those certifications. Are there any other things we should consider?
Another thing to consider is the origin of a cocoa. Some regions are known for their commitment to sustainable cocoa farming practices. For example, Ecuador is home to Ariba national cocoa beans, which are renowned for their quality and are often produced using agroforestry techniques that promote biodiversity.
So by being mindful of the origin and certifications, we can make more informed choices that support sustainable cocoa production.
Exactly, and it's not just about the labels and certifications. It's also about supporting brands that are transparent about their sourcing practices and are actively working to improve the livelihoods of cocoa farmers and their communities.
So it's a holistic approach that takes into account the environmental, social, and economic aspects of cocoa production.
Right, and as consumers, we have the power to make a difference by choosing products that align with our values.
I completely agree. Now, let's circle back to the science of cocoa for a moment. We've talked a lot about the benefits of flavanols, but there's another compound in cocoa that deserves some attention, theobromine.
Yeah.
We touched on it earlier, mentioning its potential as a bronchodilator and its possible benefits for asthma.
Right, and there's ongoing research exploring other potential benefits of theobromine,
Okay.
such as its effects on cognitive function, mood, and even dental health.
Wait, dental health? I thought chocolate was bad for your teeth.
It's true that sugary chocolate can contribute to tooth decay, but theobromine itself may actually have protective effects.
How so?
Some studies suggest that theobromine may help strengthen tooth enamel,
Okay.
making it more resistant to acid attacks that can lead to cavities.
That's fascinating. So theobromine might be a double-edged sword depending on how it's delivered.
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of looking beyond the surface and understanding the nuances of different compounds within food.
So we've explored the origins of cocoa, its transformation process, its potential health benefits, the importance of sustainable production, and even the intriguing properties of theobromine.
It has been quite a journey.
And as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question. Knowing all that we've discussed today, how might you incorporate cocoa into your routine to potentially boost your health and well-being while also supporting ethical and sustainable practices?
It's a question that encourages us to think critically about our choices and to appreciate the interconnectedness of our health, the environment, and the livelihoods of those involved in producing the foods we enjoy.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cocoa. We hope you've learned something new and are inspired to explore the wonders of this amazing ingredient. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of cocoa. We've explored the journey from bean to powder, uncovered the potential health benefits, and even delved into the complexities of ethical sourcing and sustainability.
Right, it's been quite a journey, and there's still so much to discover about this incredible ingredient.
You mentioned earlier that the research on cocoa is constantly evolving. What are some of the cutting-edge areas that scientists are currently exploring?
Well, one area that's particularly exciting is the investigation of personalized nutrition and how our individual genetics and gut microbiome might influence our response to cocoa.
So are you saying that some people might benefit more from cocoa than others based on their unique biology?
That's the idea. Researchers are exploring how variations in our genes and the composition of our gut microbiome might affect how we metabolize cocoa flavanols and experience their effects.
That's incredible. It seems like the future of nutrition is all about personalized approaches.
Absolutely, and cocoa is at the forefront of this research, offering a fascinating model for understanding how food interacts with our individual biology.
Now, shifting gears a bit, we've talked a lot about the potential benefits of cocoa for physical health, but what about its impact on mental well-being?
That's a great question. While more research is needed in this area, some studies suggest that cocoa consumption might be linked to improvements in mood and cognitive function.
We discussed the cognitive benefits earlier, but how might cocoa actually influence our mood?
Well, the flavanols in cocoa are thought to have a positive impact on brain function and blood flow, which can indirectly influence mood. Additionally, cocoa contains compounds that can stimulate the production of endorphins, those feel-good chemicals in our brains.
So there might be a scientific basis for that feeling of happiness and contentment we often associate with chocolate.
Exactly. And while more research is needed to fully understand the mechanisms involved, the initial findings are promising.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive, I want to touch on something we discussed earlier, the sustainability of cocoa production. We talked about certifications and choosing cocoa from ethical sources, but what are some of the challenges that still need to be addressed in the cocoa industry?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is ensuring fair compensation for cocoa farmers. Many farmers struggle to make a living income, which can lead to poverty and social inequality.
So even with certifications like fair trade in place, there's still work to be done to ensure that cocoa farmers are receiving a fair wage.
Absolutely. And beyond fair compensation, there are environmental challenges such as deforestation and the loss of biodiversity. Sustainable farming practices such as agroforestry are crucial for mitigating these impacts.
So it sounds like a multifaceted approach is needed, addressing both the social and environmental aspects of cocoa production.
You're right, it requires collaboration between governments, industry stakeholders, and consumers to create a more sustainable and equitable cocoa supply chain.
Well, it's clear that the world of cocoa is complex and fascinating with so much more to discover. As we conclude our deep dive, what key takeaways would you like our listeners to remember?
First and foremost, I hope they appreciate the incredible potential of cocoa, not just as a delicious treat, but as a source of valuable nutrients that might benefit our health in various ways.
And what about the ethical considerations?
It's crucial to be mindful of the social and environmental impact of our choices. By supporting sustainable and ethical cocoa production, we can contribute to a more just and sustainable future for all.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive into the world of cocoa. It's been an enlightening and delicious journey.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to continue exploring the wonders of cocoa, from its rich history and diverse flavors to its potential to nourish both our bodies and our planet. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.